Now, there are heretical doctrines which sometimes actually fly on the low, and this is an example made by Bishop ZONDO very recently. I think this week, if not the past week. But I wanted to highlight it. I'm not sure about the timeline. I'm going to play the video. And I'm going to show you how this doctrine flies at primary standards of what we call a Christian, or the belief of being a Christian. Which is why I've always said, be careful of this spiritual father doctrine, because it does border itself around the subject of primary doctrines. I'm going to explain that as we go on. It's the Reality Show. We do daily Christian commentary videos. I've always said my issues with Bishop ZONDO are doctrinal. I have no personal issues. I don't know the man, never met the man. I don't think I've never even seen the man with my two eyes. But his teachings are far from Christianity. They might sound like it. Okay, maybe there's one or two here, but then they fly on the borderline of heresy.
Thrown into the den of lions. He remained in the will of God. After Jesus was thrown in the high court of Pontius Pilate, in a dungeon, he still remained in the will of God.
Now, that particular thing that he's trying to make a justification of saying he was in trial but remained in the will of God, I hope he's not applying that to himself, but I can't help but think that, no? Just want to highlight that. I can't help but think, is he trying to apply that you can be in the will of God while in trial for having done someone wrong? I hope that's not what he means. I hope. I hope. Continue. And I want to give you an example of that. Paul actually says, do not be in trial for having defrauded your brother. Okay, so the Bible does speak about that, to say if you are in wrong, or if you are being accused of being wrong, let it be unjustly. Don't let it be that you really did do something wrong. Okay, so just so for those people that are hearing that part and not clear.
When John the Baptist, the spiritual father of Jesus, he's been thrown into the prison. He didn't know if Jesus was the one, but he remained until he was killed, decapitated.
Okay, so first of all, I've explained this thing, but I think I should explain for newer people that might have been in here. We once talked about the Baptist situation where he is in thingy and they are questioning. He there, sits in there and says, "Are you the one, or should we wait for another?" And we've explained that point is that John the Baptist was not doubting. He wasn't doubting. Yes, he was in a trial and he was in a difficult space, and it's easy for us to think that he was doubting, but he was not doubting. The situation was that the rejection of the Jews of the Messiah didn't make sense to him. And so that's what baffled him. What baffled him was the rejection. Because remember, John the Baptist had many different confirmations. Okay? John the Baptist had the confirmation, particularly even in the baptism. He heard the voice. He saw the dove come down, and the message of the dove coming down came to him particularly. Okay, and after that, they asked him what his thoughts are concerning his disciples and more people following Jesus, and he said, "No. He is the Messiah, and I'm not that important. He is important. I must decrease." And so he knew, he was sure. That's just to prove that he was sure that Jesus was the Messiah. The thing that he was facing during the period when he was in prison and he asked, is he the one, or should we wait for another? It was the he was in doubt because of the issue of the Jews. The Jews' disagreement with that Jesus was the Messiah baffled him. Okay? That's number one. Number two, knowing those errors, knowing that a person might be in doubt because of human error. How does Bishop Zondo then come to the conclusion that John the Baptist was the spiritual father of of Jesus? Listen to this again.
The spiritual father of Jesus. He's been thrown into the prison.
We don't even need to listen to the rest of that. He says that Jesus' spiritual father is John the Baptist. That is foul. Now, this shows you that this doctrine is very weird. Now, the idea of it is that, I'm the one who came before you and whatnot and the whole nine hajjahs. Now, you are saying John the Baptist is the spiritual father of his creator. Now, this is where it goes back on. It shows that this doctrine, it's not clear, Basalan. I've explained this. The idea of a spiritual father. Well, if you're taking from the subject of saying, this is the person that brought this person to salvation, this is how you would have used it in the context of Paul, right? Now, if you are using it within that context, did John the Baptist bring Jesus to salvation? The way you love blasphemy, you people. Guys, this is where you can see that the doctrine itself has a problem. Not only does the doctrine itself have a problem, Bishop Zondo's teaching here is heretical. And how is it heretical? Because it makes the Messiah subject to the human. It makes the Creator subject to the human. What's the whole subject of the spiritual father? He's trying to qualify his teachings up around that subject. Falls on his face. The idea of a spiritual father. Now, the Bible does address it, that we have one spiritual father, which is God. No, it says, call no man your father. Why? Within the context that God is your spiritual father. Now, if you led me to Christ, good for you. You want credit for that? Are you sure? Are you sure? Paul questions people that think like that in Corinthians. Chapter number 1, not even 2. Corinthians, 1 Corinthians is, as a matter of fact, addressing that. He says, I brought you guys what Apollos watered, but it is God. Now, I don't have to quote the whole thing. I hope I don't have to quote the whole thing. He says it is God who gives the increase. It is God who brings. If a person comes to salvation because of you, you don't want to take credit for that. Let God reward you for that. But you don't want to take credit for that. Because once you start doing that, you start being in competition with God. You don't want to be in that position. What Bishop Zondo is saying is so heretical. I am even afraid to say how far it goes. Because it's saying that God's dependency of spirituality, it's John the Baptist. Already he has just said that John had his own fault, his own errors. But then in those errors, he still thinks that person can be a spiritual father of another of Jesus. Now let me tell you another position where it falls. Because first of all, it assumes that Jesus needs salvation. It's the idea that he led him to salvation, or he led him to spiritual growth. That's the two areas you might apply this idea of spiritual father, right? Now, does Jesus need spiritual growth? Very clear that he wasn't spiritually groomed by a person. It wasn't lessons that he got from a person. Okay? The Bible is very clear on that particular subject. So, what is he a spiritual father of? When it comes to Jesus, the doctrine that Bishop Zondo is teaching here, it's heretical. It undermines who the Messiah is. It undermines God, as a matter of fact. But this is what happens when you're trying to find ground to justify your teaching. You end up undermining the majority of what the Christian faith is about. The foundation centers around God. It doesn't center around men. Now, the reason why Jesus would need a spiritual father, according to Bishop Zondo, is that he isn't the center of our faith. And Hebrews is very clear. He is the author and the finisher. So how can he be author and finisher if he has a spiritual father? It doesn't make sense. How do you even come to this kind of conclusions? Bazalwane, dump all this spiritual father business. Okay, if you led someone to Christ or you led someone towards their spiritual growth, you're not responsible for that person. It is God who is responsible for that person. If you start trying to take credit for that, you'll answer before the Lord. This position clamoring, yes, I led to that person's spiritual growth. Be careful of that. It is God who does that. Paul is very clear in Corinthians. It is baby Christianity thinking. When a person starts thinking like that, if you think you are mature and you believe that, you might want to question yourself. You're not responsible for anybody's growth. You're not. You're not capable of it. It is God. That's why he says it is not by might, not by power, but it is by my spirit. My brother, you can teach someone whatever you want. If they're not convicted of it, that's it. The Trick is Actuality Show. And I hope this video finds you well and it clears this particular thing where you can see how far it goes, how this spiritual doctrine, fatherhood thing goes. It goes heretical. Be careful.